Today we're discussing and having the ultimate showdown between camber and hybrid snowboards. We're going to be discussing the pros and cons of each of them. So by the end of the video, you're going to be able to make an educated decision on what style of board that you want. I'm not a big fan of doing product reviews, but I am a big fan of talking about nerdy snowboard things. So I say this definitely falls into the snowboard nerdy things. The very first snowboard style profile that we're going to start with is going to be the camber in the middle and the early rise or the reverse camber, the tip and the tails. Let's discuss the pros of this board. If you're going slower speed, your board is going to feel very maneuverable. You're going to have this ability to get on edge and turn quite quickly. It's going to feel super awesome in the moguls. It's going to feel super awesome in POW. It's going to feel super awesome in POW because you have that early rise of the nose of the snowboard. When the nose of the snowboard is risen like that, it's acting like a boat trying to stay afloat on top of the snow. Super beneficial, super awesome, especially if you have super heavy snow. Let's say you have super light snow, but it's really flat. You're going to be able to stay on top of that. Other benefits is as long as you're in the center of the board, you're going to feel pretty stable. And then if you go past the binding, either the lead binding or the lead binding or back binding, you're going to have a lot of flexibility where the board's not going to have a lot of rigidity, which is going to be super beneficial for doing butters, doing nose presses, tail presses, that kind of stuff. It's going to make that board feel very playful, very fun. Now, some of the not so awesome parts of this is depending on the board, specific board, this style of board could feel unstable at high speeds, especially if you happen to get in the back seat or too far in the front seat. One specific situation that comes to mind, let's say you're going really fast and hitting a big jump. Well, a lot of times the jump, you're going to have a lot of compression. If you're really scared of the jump, you're going to be leaning back in the back seat. Then you're also going to put a lot of pressure. Well, because that board's shaped like this, you put pressure on it. The board naturally is not fighting to save you. It's just going to build that pressure, and it's going to be really easy for you to want to fall over or slip out. The same thing is going to apply on a big jump as you land. Let's say you land super tail heavy. That board doesn't have the rigidity to be able to help you come back to that normal body position. So pros and cons of that, right? As long as you're in the center of the board, you're going to feel pretty amazing. Definitely more, I personally feel, and you guys definitely comment down below if you agree or disagree with any of this, but I feel this is a very good beginner intermediate style board just because it has the flexibility, the versatility to do a lot of awesome things. It's like a Swiss Army knife. It does a lot of things really well. And I would say that it doesn't specifically do one thing great, but it does a lot of things pretty well. So definitely not a bad option for a board, but that's my thoughts on that one. Let me check, make sure we're still recording. Good. Now, the next one, let's talk about a reverse camber in the center and then a camber, traditional camber profile at the tip and the tail. With this style of board, you're going to feel like the board's a lot longer, so you're going to have that stability, a bit more stability on that, the length of the board for a bit more high speed. Other benefits is you might feel that there's a bit of a center pivot point. And when there's a center pivot point, you feel like there's a lot more maneuverability in your snowboard as you're in a lift line. I used to do this all the time. Lift line on a hybrid board, just as I'm explaining. You go in a lift line, oh, you just feel so agile that you can maneuver around people with like no problem. It was like God tier maneuverability. Super freaking sick. And then I just feel like as you're in the center of the board, you're going to get a little bit of rigidity towards the tip and tail of the board because of the camber profile. But I feel like overall, there's a little bit of a different feeling in the center of the board. So some of the downsides of this is I feel as you're doing a carve, it could feel just a little less intact in the snow, feels a little less grippy in the snow because in a normal camber board, we'll talk about it here in a little bit, camber board, when you're in a carve, it decambers. But what happens when you're already in a decambered position? I think your board's just not going to feel the same amount of oomph on it. And then when you're doing some freestyle stuff, I feel like when you do an ollie, if you can ollie and shift your weight super far to the back foot to be able to get that camber profile is going to feel pretty good, but if you're not getting so far back, it might feel a bit noodly. The pros of the noodle feeling, it's going to be maneuverable, it's going to be vibey, it's going to be fun, it's going to be jibby at medium, slow speeds. Yeah, so that's my thoughts on those two. Let's talk about reverse camber profiles. Straight up, 100% reverse camber. I would argue reverse camber is incredible for riding POW. I rode a 145 skate banana on an 18-inch powder day in copper, and not once did my nose sink, and I did it like a front flip over the handlebars type thing, because the nose the whole time was just trying to lift, just trying to have the best time ever. And I usually ride a 152 as reference. And it was incredible how well it handled POW, especially on a 145, 7 centimeters shorter than traditional on how I ride it. So I was actually pretty blown away on how good that was. And sorry for the light if the sun's blowing you out, my bad. Kind of walking aimlessly in the circles, right? But reverse camber, super incredible. If you want to be a god tier snowboarder at nose presses, then you want to have a reverse camber board, because you barely have to shift your weight over, and because the reverse camber, the board's not fighting you, it's just going to flex, 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 and all of a sudden you have the sickest nose presses, you have the sickest tail presses. You want to be a butter god? Holy cow, you're going to be a butter god. Can you still carve on it? Yes, I feel that the carve is not going to be as strong, not as locked in, not as powerful, but that's really what you're looking for, is just that maneuverability. And then same thing if you're in a lift line, super maneuverable. If you're making slow turns, or slow speed turns, you're gonna have that flexibility to get that board to maneuver quite nicely. And definitely not a bad thing. I would say it's a bit more niche of what it does really well, which is gonna be riding POW and being jibby and nose pressy. It's not so much about being stable. I feel like you're not gonna be able to get as much ollie out of it. In generally speaking, of course, there's going to be some anomalies in some boards that have some crazy little technology that helps that. But in general, reverse camber boards can be a little bit more challenging to get that oomph out of your board, that performance out of your board. Now, I'm not saving the best for last, but we are going to be talking about camber boards and why I find camber to be the ultimate snowboard for me. Now, this is very subjective. This is based on 25 years of snowboarding, experimenting with different boards, tricks, and taking in consideration my body type, my size, my riding style, my objectives, and what I want to get done on my snowboard. So I think we should start there. My goal in my snowboard is to have one weapon that can handle power, can have a lot of output, that feels locked in, that is stable AF. And that's my riding style, is to be able to be powerful and strong and almost like vicious. Like I just want to try to just be aggressive. And that could be for my carving, could be hitting large jumps. It could be hitting rails where I'm gapping and smashing onto the, disastering onto the rail. That's the style of riding that I like. So when having a camber board, incredible, is the board's naturally shaped like this. The benefit of that is as I decamber the snowboard, and let's say we're doing an ollie, I decamber the snowboard, and it goes like this, it naturally wants to return back to its original state, which is here. Notice that the board wants to snap back from underneath me. I put all this power in, and I usually get a 7 out of 10 on the stiffness scale for a camber board as reference, so that when I put that power in, man, that board's gonna come back and snap and help me. There was a situation, and spoke about this in another video, but there's a situation, I was riding this crazy gnarly mogul field and absolutely just going fast and almost losing it. And the scary part was I'm literally about to run into a freaking tree. No joke, not being dramatic, being realistic. So I'm riding into this tree and I hit this mogul and the tail of my board pushed the nose of my board down like this. And all of a sudden, I'm back in a centered position. All of a sudden, I'm back in a position to be able to stop. I feel if I had a super, super soft board or a reverse camber board or a certain hybrid board, that tail would have just overflexed and I would have spit out and I would have fallen. And I've done that on other other boards on jumps where I've landed too far to the back seat, And then all of a sudden my board can't handle that pressure and just spits me out. And I fall and I look lame and I'm bummed and I'm not stoked because my board couldn't handle it. Granted, yes, I should have been in a better body position in the landing. But if I can get my board to help me land more often, that's what I'm looking for. So let's dive into the benefits of camber. And again, I'm not just trying to sell you on camber. I'm trying to sell you on why I love camber and is it going to benefit you. But there's also other board profiles that ultimately you got to decide if it's going to elevate or hinder your ability to send. So camber boards being like this, you can put a lot of pressure in it. Imagine you're doing high speed carves. That profile is going to be able to lock into the snow a lot better. When you're landing too far back seat, it's going to help you land. When you want to do a bigger ollie, you're going to be able to handle that. When you are riding aggressive and fast, it's going to be a lot more stable. It's going to plow through a lot of off-piste terrain. Now, camber snowboards are not for everyone, and there are some not so sick parts about camber. Got some stuff in my shoes. It's freaking hurting. Not so awesome about camber. Rough on a powder day. I use the analogy of my boards like this. On a powder day, it wants to act like a submarine, therefore it's trying to dive into the snow, so then you're having to put so much unnecessary freaking energy in just getting the nose up. My leg's burning, it's freaking tough, it's not fun. On low terrain, you're just diving, you're fighting it, you're diving, you're fighting it. It is not as fun of an experience on low terrain and a lot of pow. You have to ride at a minimal threshold or a minimum buy-in to really get that board to perform the way it needs to perform. So it's like you have to ride aggressive or that board is going to ride you. You got to take control of that board and just really force it to do what you want it to do, which also means that you have to come into the day pretty aggressive. You have to be warmed up. You have to be feeling good. You have to have that mentality to like really drive this board. For the board style that I ride, that's a bit of on the stiffer side. On a normal camber board, maybe like a softer camber board, you don't have to be as aggressive. But stiffer camber boards, you have to be aggressive, and you have to be like, butters are a lot harder because you're having to put so much more energy to get the board to lift off the snow on the opposite part of the end of the board. You got to try so hard to do so many things that other boards are just naturally going to be gifted at, right? So I am a massive fan of camber boards. Now, I would say in the last 20 years, I've rode a couple different snowboards, but my go-to snowboard probably 95% of the time has been straight up camber boards. I'm very biased towards them. Again, it's elevating my experience for what I want. It's not hindering me, it's helping me. But again, that's my own thoughts on that. So definitely some awesome pros and cons to every snowboard. There is no perfect snowboard that's going to handle everything and be great at everything, but what is your trade-off? What is your willingness or your willingness to maybe not have such good things on certain snowboards and the other? And at the end of the day, as you're new to snowboarding or starting to snowboard, or you've been snowboarding for a little bit, however long it is, I recommend trying as many different board styles as you can and find the board that elevates your riding and doesn't hinder your riding. And as you evolve in your skills by watching the channel and subscribing and definitely liking this video, you should become a better or different snowboarder that you're gonna have to reevaluate what board you're riding. You as a beginner, the first year you were snowboarding is not the same person you are now. So you gotta adjust, you gotta adapt, you gotta vibe and figure out what that's going to be. And then if you can demo a snowboard and you can ride a snowboard, absolutely do that. And if you wanna check out somebody's channel, there's a couple YouTubers online that are pretty awesome. I may, making sure no one hears this, may or may not be doing a collab with Angry Snowboarder, but check out his channel because he's got some awesome reviews, super nerdy, super techy, some really good stuff. I see him snowboard all the time. Dude's a homie for sure. So check out that channel. But yeah, at the end of the day, you just want to try to get as much information as you can and get the right board that is for you. Well, on that note, if you guys are interested in supporting the channel, check out Shop Bennett. It's going to be my clothing and goggle and outerwear company designed for snowboarders by snowboarders to make your day and your experience on the mountain way more awesome. Also, if you have any questions of the content or you want to have a discussion, join me Tuesday, which is going to be tomorrow, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for a live Q&A here on YouTube. It's a good time. Also, it's a great opportunity to try to win a sticker. And if you want to support the channel, there are some donation links to help support the channel, which money comes to the money comes back to you guys by trying to put out the most amazing content that I can. And we're going to be posting every single day on YouTube. So all of that is extremely appreciative. I am now full-time on YouTube. So everything and anything helps. But my goal is to make you the most amazing snowboarder ever. And on that note, join me tomorrow, 7 p.m. Join me every day, 7 p.m. Do a premiere on the new video, dropping content every day. You're amazing. Enough rambling. What snowboard are you gonna ride this year? Let me know down below. See ya.